diagnosis of dementia happens, your sense of control over your life can feel shattered. You've been told a terrible thing, and it will likely take you some time to find your feet again. Sadly, some people never find their feet again, and their experience of caregiving can reflect that. Now, I don't want any of you here to embrace that as inevitable. It doesn't have to be that way. For those of you who are new to the journey, especially, and for those of you who may have lost heart, I'm hoping that this presentation will give you a new way to reframe how you see yourself as a caregiver. For example, even though you must accept the reality of this diagnosis, that doesn't mean that it totally controls your whole life going forward. A reframed acceptance means that you now take action to learn all you can about dealing with it. This is your life story. Helen mentioned this, and I also hope you will tell yourself, as long as I'm alive, I have choices. The choices that I make at this point and moving forward will define in great part my family's experience of this dementia journey. Try saying this to yourself. Yes, dementia is now in my story. It's part of my life. But my life, not dementia, my life is my story. My story unfolds through my actions and my words. What story do you want your children and your grandchildren to tell about you in this season of your life? As primary caregiver, you have much more power than you may realize. My hope is that you claim that power. In the LBD community, we call this transforming from Louie worriers into Louie warriors. You have power. You are not helpless. I know you feel like it sometimes. I know I did, but you're not. This is doable. Now let's dive into some of the foundational things that research actually supports about how you make this more doable. All of them have to do with how we think, how we approach things, what our attitude is as we take action as caregivers. You can take an action and get a very different outcome depending on the attitude you have as you approach and while you're taking that action. So attitude matters. How we think, what we think, how we approach our actions really matters. In fact, it's foundational. Now, I recently saw a powerful video by a lady named Lucy Hone, and she had just lost her teenage daughter in a horrible car crash. That sudden, devastating loss forced Lucy Hone to learn how to be resilient so that she could be there for the rest of her family going forward. And this is what Lucy Hone learned. She learned that resilient people get it, that stuff happens. They know that suffering is a part of life. And knowing this stops them from thinking, why me? The second big thing she said was resilient people are very good at carefully choosing where they put their attention. They focus on the things they can change and somehow accept the things that they cannot change. This is a vital, learnable skill for resilience. Resilient people don't diminish the negative, but they've worked out a way of choosing into the good. She says, and these are her words, don't lose what you have to what you have lost. I'm going to say that again. Don't lose what you have to what you have lost. Now, this is an intentional, deliberate effort to tune into what is good in your world, she says. The third secret is to ask yourself, is what I'm doing helping or harming me? Is the way you're thinking lately helping or harming you? This puts you back into the driver's seat. It gives you more control over your decision making. Now, before we dive into some more specific attitudes to embrace, let's talk about an elephant in the room in almost any household. One of the best kept secrets for a more gentle caregiver journey is forgiveness. It's important for us to forgive past hurts as well as current disappointments. It's also vital to forgive yourself for not doing a perfect job all the time as you care for your loved one. Remember, no one's lining up to take your place as the primary caregiver. Have you noticed? That's because it's one of the hardest jobs on earth. That's why I called you heroes at the beginning of my talk, because that's what you are. Heroes run toward the fire, not away from it. You're there with the fire. So be quick to forgive yourself. Learn from your mistakes and then move forward. Most of us have someone who's hurt us in some way. It may be the person who just got this diagnosis or someone else. I encourage you to make a decision to forgive those people. Forgiveness is liberating to the person who forgives. The release of anger and resentment and judgment of another person actually frees the person who's carrying those feelings around inside. It takes a lot of energy to carry those heavy emotions with you all the time. Letting them go is like dropping a bag of rocks or allowing a heavy chain to fall off your shoulders. Now that energy is now available to you for better choices. And with dementia caregiving, as you well know, you need all the energy you can muster. I hope you save that energy to put a laser focus on what you can do, what is good in your world, and on your real enemies. By the way, if you want to know more about forgiveness, I do have a YouTube video on this, and there's a link for you to find it. So, once you decide this is actually doable and that you're going to practice forgiveness, what's next? I suggest that you choose your overall goals for the journey. I suggest these non-drug approaches to managing behavioral issues. Manage stress levels everywhere you possibly can. This means your stress as well as your loved ones. When you take action to lower the emotional temperature in the room, symptoms are more gentle and everyone's life is easier. Preserve your loved one's personhood. Oh, Dan Kaufer said this to us at our very first appointment. He said, the goal is to preserve John's personhood. He gave me my life's mission. Sorry. Preserving a person's personhood. It means to nurture, to love, and support the person with the disease. It means separating in your mind and in your heart behaviors the disease creates from the essence of the person with the disease. You are their advocate, their protector, their champion. The disease is your enemy. Preserving personhood is your mission. Now, your attitude is the foundation for delivering on these goals. As we've learned in almost any situation in life, our attitude is a big factor in how successful we are. In dementia caregiving, our action can make a huge difference. This is what we recommend for behavior management issues. I call these the 5 P's. Be positive. Be proactive. Be perceptive. Be persistent. And totally essential to managing behavior issues is personify the disease. Now, let's briefly discuss these one at a time. Be positive. Now, you can go in the other direction, but gentle journey is not found there. Let me be clear. I am not talking about denial of reality here. This diagnosis is tough, and the enemy is formidable. That means, as caregivers, we need the most effective tools we can find. Positivity has been researched for years, and it's proven to be a key tool that builds resilience in those who practice it. Negative energy drains us. Positive energy strengthens us. We need all the resilience and strength that we can get for this marathon called caregiving. So I encourage you to embrace the science that says being positive helps. Now, how do we do that? We can neutralize the negative impacts one at a time. Here's the strategy. When you feel consumed by a negative feeling, identify it and acknowledge it. This is self-awareness. Take time to pause and reflect about what is happening to you inside, and then choose to take action that will neutralize or minimize the impact on you. Like this. Let's say you're feeling sad. So go call a friend who's going to listen to you, let you vent a little bit, but a friend who makes you laugh. Or think about that old TV show or a new series that just makes you belly laugh when you look at it. You're using the laughter to actually neutralize your sadness. Or another example, let's say you feel angry. So, there it is. So leave the room. Take 3 slow, long, deep breaths. And then pray to help in forgiving what just happened. Just, okay, I need to let this go. I need to forgive and move on. The rule of thumb here is to choose the opposite emotion for whatever is going on that's negatively impacting you at that time. There are going to be lots more examples tomorrow when we talk about action. Okay, the attitude, be proactive. Next, it's vital to have a proactive attitude and approach to problem solving. Be proactive instead of reactive. And this is similar to what Helen calls being a fixer. Rather than reacting as things unfold, try to anticipate issues by educating yourself. Join a support group, go online, learn about what might come up, and then stay ahead of things in a proactive way. If you're likely to need certain resources or certain practical tools, physical things in your home, for instance, find what's available where you live at the most reasonable price and how to access it. Bring it into the house. My basement and closets were full of things well before I knew I'd need them, so that when they came, when John's need for them came up, I already had some of that in the house a lot of the time. Not all the time, but enough to help. Being proactive also means being willing to speak up when you just know something's not right. You're your loved one's advocate. You're their voice. Share what you're learning with others, especially medical professionals who may not be as familiar as you would hope they would be about your loved one's form of dementia. And those of you who are watching who are LBD caregivers know exactly what I'm talking about. Dr. James Galvin down in Florida said it's the most common unknown disease out there. And he was absolutely right. So sometimes you're going to be the one in the room with medical people, because you've done your homework, that actually might know more. So learn how to manage that. We're going to talk about that some more tomorrow too. So it's important for you to do your homework as a caregiver. Learn what you need to know. Don't assume when you walk into every doctor's office or you walk into any room where they're paid caregivers that they're going to know. Educate yourself about your loved one's particular form of dementia, so you can ask vitally important, pivotal questions when you are, especially with doctors. Things like, could we try another medication for that symptom? See, you will have done your homework, and you will have maybe been in touch with other caregivers who've dealt with a similar dementia, form of dementia. And so you can say, could this medicine maybe work? Could we give it a try? Have a good, educated conversation with that doctor. Or you might ask, could this be another form of dementia? Because oftentimes dementias are misdiagnosed. And so asking that question is pivotal. Now, let me explain pivotal. Helen said, be sure you explain this. Think about a basketball game. You're watching them go down the court, they're bouncing the basketball, and the player stops and pivots. He or she turns. And when they pivot, they're going to do something different. They're going to go in another direction. That's what I'm talking about here. You do your homework, educate yourself, and you'll know when to pivot. You'll know when to ask a good question that can be a game changer for your loved one. Sometimes the question, as Dr. Bateman alluded to, is taking away a medicine, not adding one. So, because there are lots and lots of medicines that can create problems with dementia. Being proactive also means you're willing to speak up when you know something is not right. Remember, you're your loved one's advocate. You're their voice. So share everything that you're learning. Do it in all these different situations, and use your team that you are creating to support you and your loved one on the journey. We're going to talk about teams later too. Ask others for help. This is not a solo sport. It takes a team. And caregiver, you are the coach of the team. The coach decides who gets to play. The coach is there for every play. Remember, you're the coach of that team, and that's a place where you have much more power than you may realize you have. Here are some actions that will empower you. Learn about specific symptoms of dementia. Learn about treatments and especially what to avoid. As I've said before, and you may hear me say again, with dementia, it can be more important to know what to avoid than it is even to know what to take. And I think Dr. Bateman alluded to that as well in his wonderful talk today. Learn about non-drug interventions. That's the stuff we're going to be talking about a lot tomorrow. Learn about triggers that affect the disease. We're covering many of those items also in these webinars. Triggers are things that cause something to happen, and it's usually not a good thing. So learning what triggers are is a big deal. find the right doctor who best knows how to treat your loved one's form of dementia and a doctor who listens to you. There was a question earlier about do we go with primary care? And this is one of the things I always say to the people I talk with who are in the middle of the journey. I say there are two kinds of doctors who are your ideal doctors. The first one is the one who really totally knows how to care about for this particular form of dementia, and they just are experts in how to manage it, and they're really good at listening to you. The second kind of doctor is the one who may not know, but they're humble enough to learn. They're willing to learn, and they listen to you, and they honor and respect you as someone who is doing your homework, and they're willing to work with you as a team member. Both of those kinds of doctors are just wonderful. We were blessed to have one of each of those in our journey. Build your care team with you as coach of the team. And remember, the coach gets to decide who gets to play in the game. And by the way, some caregivers are very intimidated by physicians. And one of the things I say, not to be disrespectful, but you can fire a doctor. It's the easiest thing on earth to do. You just don't go back. You don't go back. And that's how you fire the doctor. So if you know it's not a good match for you, seek out someone else and don't go back to that physician. Connect with other caregivers, family members, neighbors, as well as professionals who are part of your care team to help you in this journey. Don't try to do it alone. Okay, the next thing we recommend is be perceptive about what is happening around you. This is similar to what Helen calls being empathetic in her presentations. Ask others you trust to help you in your observations as you discern not only what is happening, but which things are the most important to address. Some of the stuff we deal with, you just have to kind of let go. So let's dig into perception a little more. There are several areas where being perceptive can have a huge impact that's positive. Add a counselor to your team to address the emotional impact on your family if you possibly can. We did this. It was a game changer. My husband, John, told me one day in the middle of the dementia journey that Dr. Ledford, our counselor that we both went to, and then eventually I had to go to alone, that Dr. Ledford had helped him as much as Dr. Kaufer, one of the world's experts in Lewy body dementia. And I said, John, really? How? And he said, he gave me clarity. He gave me clarity. How about that? In the middle of the dementia journey. Here's what a counselor can bring to you. They can help you with coping skills on a day-to-day basis. They can help you with communication issues, not only with your loved one, but with the other people around you, the people in your family who are causing relationship dynamic issues, and they help you with that. He can help you with, or she can help you with forgiveness of past hurts and grief issues. So a counselor can be an invaluable person on your care team. Another way to be perceptive is to be sensitive to your loved one's symptoms. Record the changes in their physical, their psychological, and their behavioral symptoms. Report these to the doctor and work together with the doctor to find solutions. Identify specific triggers that affect the disease experience. Here are some examples of triggers. Multiple people speaking at a time in the room. You used to take that for granted. Don't take that for granted anymore. That can be a trigger for problems. Forgetting to explain what you're about to do before you begin to do it. The other piece of that is explain it, but then give time for the cognitive processing of your words to go through your loved one's brain. Too much change from routine. That can be a trigger. Loud voices definitely can be a trigger. The wrong lighting, too much, too little, in the wrong place. It's going to be very individual for each person, all of these things. Rushing can definitely be a trigger. So slow everything down. Go through life slowing your speech, taking deeper breaths, just taking your time. Rushing can be a trigger. Having too many choices. Remember, cognitive processing is now very difficult for them. So limit the number of choices that you give. Be persistent. Persistence is the opposite of being passive. You stick with your plan. You don't give up. You don't take no for an answer sometimes when you're advocating with someone for your loved one, especially if you have the healthcare power of attorney. Wow, you have a lot more power than you've realized. It's a daily choice to be positive, proactive, and perceptive. That takes persistence. But be persistent about taking breaks too. Perhaps the most essential of all these attitudes is this one: personify the disease. If you master this one, it's a massive game changer when applied to behavioral issues in dementia. Personify the disease. To preserve personhood, you must separate the disease from your loved one. Rather than wringing your hands in a fretful way and stressing over why he or she is behaving the way they are, focus on problem solving. Now, to preserve John's personhood, I separated him from his disease. I gave the monster a name, Louis, because he had Lewy body dementia. If you're dealing with Alzheimer's, you could name it Al or whatever. If you're frontotemporal, you could name it Frank or Francine, whatever. Pick a name that works for you. But think about that monster as a person, and giving it a name may help you. I separated Louis's actions and Louis's words from John's in my mind and in my heart. That was Louis speaking. Louis was a monster and my enemy. Louis wanted to devour us both, and I knew it. By the way, caregivers often can predecease the person with the disease. So remember, the monster's after you too. So don't feed the monster by reacting to it. I shunned Louis's words or actions as often as I could. I left the room, or I redirected the conversation. Love and nurture the person. Outsmart the monster. This gives you emotional distance. Emotional distance allows you to think more clearly, to problem solve better, to use improv acting to validate underlying emotions and needs, and then redirect the situation. I'm going to talk about improv acting more later, don't worry. Emotional distance allows you to respond kindly to your loved one, and this preserves personhood. Use this technique of personify Louis, or whatever you name it, with your grandchildren. I said, or your children, I said to my grandsons, "That's just that mean old Louis, sweetheart. That's Louis talking to you right now. That's not your pops. Your pops would never speak to you like that. He loves you." Or I'd say, "Honey, leave the room if Pops looks mad or does something mean. That's just old Louis. That's not your Pops. Wait a bit and go back to Pops later. He'll be glad to see you." It gives them someone to blame. And it worked. You know what? It was an experiment at my house and it worked. Hallelujah. I was thrilled. Many folks run into relationship problems soon after the diagnosis. You may have family members and others who disappoint you by not helping as you assumed they would. Medical professionals who are not up to date with the most effective methods for treating your loved one may frustrate you. Regardless of how it feels, those folks are not your enemy. Your potential enemies are listed here: the disease itself, stress, shame, guilt. We're going to talk about the difference in just a minute, and worry. Now, guilt and worry actually can be turned into assets when you manage them appropriately. Now, remember this slide from earlier? So step one here, once again, is forgiveness. Forgive those who disappoint you and forgive yourself for not being perfect all the time. Remember, no one wants to trade places with you because you're doing the hardest job. So be easy on yourself as well. The disease itself, let's go into the things that are your enemy. The disease itself is your obvious first enemy. And this webinar is designed to give you lots of tools to outsmart it. So I'm not going into that right now. Don't worry, tomorrow will be packed with that information. And if you can't be here tomorrow, you're going to be able to get it as a recording. So don't let that stress you either. Let's talk about stress. My primary mantra throughout the years of caring for John was choose the lesser stressor. To put it simply, whenever I had to decide what to do, and I had more than one way to do it, I chose the less stressful way. I had to release how I had always done things. We have to break those habits. We just can't keep doing everything the way we've always done it. So it could be as simple as not being the cook at Thanksgiving or at a special family dinner. Just delegate that to somebody else. It could be not letting your loved one have that colonoscopy that you would have done before dementia came into the story. Things like that. You choose what is going to stress less. Think about what you have to go through to have a colonoscopy before, as well as having the colonoscopy itself, going into any kind of medical procedure. So you choose the lesser stressor. Dr. Brené Brown studies shame and its impact on us. It's bad, and it should be avoided. Guilt actually can be a tool to motivate us to choose better going forward, but it's easy to confuse these things. So let's talk about it. Shame is when we tell ourselves that we are bad. Guilt is when we tell ourselves we did something bad. Now, there's a big difference between how we live our lives and do our caregiving between these two responses. Think for a moment about the people in your life. Who would you guess influences your attitudes the most? Whose words do you believe the most? Our counselor told John and me that our self-talk is what we are most likely to believe. So what we say to ourselves is hugely important. I'm stupid. I always mess things up. I just can't do this. Or, well, that didn't work. I guess I'd better try something else next time. I can do this. Now, which set of words create an attitude that makes for a better dementia journey. And guess who's in control of that, people? We are. Don't go on guilt trips. This is paraphrased from Helen and Jim Whitworth's book, Responsive Dementia Care, which, by the way, is my favorite book of all the wonderful books they've written. Highly recommend it, and to think that you can get it for free now, wow. Responsive Dementia Care, great book. Here's what they say in it. This is a quote. Guilt trips never go anywhere helpful. They just pull you down. Guilt's job is to alert you to something that didn't work well. So, let yourself feel the guilt. Don't deny it. As a matter of fact, you may have to ask someone for forgiveness because of something you did, especially your loved one with dementia. Look for the lesson. Once you've done what you can to change it so you can do better next time, guilt's job is done. Any more is damaging. Let it go. Then forgive yourself and move forward. What about worry? Here's some more good advice from that Whitworth book. A moderate amount of worry can lead to constructive evaluations and motivate you to take action, say the Whitworths. A moderate amount of worry can lead to constructive evaluations and motivate you to take action. So, worry a little. Reevaluate. Say to yourself things like this. What can I do? Who should I ask? What are my options? What else can I try? Can I think of anything better? So you look for a better way. And then you try again. If the first thing you try doesn't work, try again. Being willing, they say, to try something different is a big part of being flexible. That's what the Whitworths say. And Pat says it's also being proactive and persistent. Here are some proactive shifts in attitude to consider. If you're beating yourself up about something that you wish you'd done differently in the past, you are not focused on the present. The past exists only in your mind. Staying in the moment is an important tool for dementia caregiving. For future worries, shift to a problem-solving mode and get your team members to help you with that. Or let's say you want to go for a break and then you feel guilty. What would you say to your best friend if she had been doing what you've been doing over the past few months or few years? Would you say she needs to feel bad? Would you say, no, you don't really need a break? Or would you encourage her to take that break because it makes sense? You care about her. You want the best for her or him. So be your own best friend. Treat yourself as lovingly as you would treat your best friend. I call that using the best friend method. Now, this slide is inspired by Jolene Brackey, who wrote a beautiful book called Creating Moments of Joy that's full of little things you could do that are so positive. It's also inspired by Dr. Brené Brown. Jolene Brackey discovered a brilliant truth that we can all embrace. We have the power to create joy in others and for ourselves. Brené Brown told a neat story about when she was with her daughter one day, and the daughter closed her eyes while they were out on a paddle boat together on a lake. And Brene asked her daughter what she was doing. And the daughter said, I'm making picture memories. When I read that, it made me realize that I had some of those from my days of caring for John. I can see in my mind and I can feel in my heart moments we shared on our back porch, just being together, sometimes talking, sometimes not. I can see us dancing together in our kitchen to our song until I could stop crying. Now, those of you who've read my book know the context of that story. You may be remembering that right now. I used that particular memory to say goodbye to our house, where we'd lived together for 26 years. The last thing I did in that house before walking out the door to move near family after John's death was this. I turned on our song. I wrapped my arms around myself as I closed my eyes, and I danced slowly in the kitchen. I was reliving those loving moments when my husband had held me so lovingly and connected with me so deeply, even in the middle of dementia. When I told this story about how I left the house and the last thing I did to our daughter, Paige, she said, "Oh, Mom." And I responded to her, "No, Paige, don't be sad. I wanted those last minutes in our house to be remembering the most precious ones with your dad." Those and many picture memories are forever in my heart, and they bless me to this very day. While you still can, I encourage you to create small moments of joy, everyday things of infinite value, and make your own picture memories. They are priceless. Now, your attitude determines your journey. No one does this job perfectly. It's too hard, and we're all human. But remembering to forgive ourselves and others, to be our own best friend, to choose to be positive, proactive, perceptive, persistent, and to personify the disease, to embrace strategies that build resilience, to see worry and guilt as triggers that will make us reflect and then make better choices, and creating moments of joy and making picture memories. These kinds of attitudes will give you a much more gentle and fulfilling journey for this season of our lives. Our attitudes are the foundation upon which we take informed actions as caregivers. And tomorrow, we're going to talk all about action. Thank you. I do want to say before we go to Q&A that if you look at the slides for this event and my talk, you will see, and the end of mine and Helen's, you will see these links that, and I have put in links that are directly connected to this talk on my YouTube channel, where you can go and watch me talk about and listen to me talk about these things in more detail. So thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you so much. That was, I don't have words. It was inspiring. It was very touching. We were getting comments about how people appreciate you sharing. I love that you touched on creating moments of joy and holding on to those precious memories. so important for all of us. We really appreciate that. We only had a few comments during that because I think everybody was just really listening to you. One person wanted us to make sure that we mentioned to everyone that it's not only doctors who are the skilled dementia providers, and I'm sure you've had a lot of experience with non-doctor providers.
Yes.
I know nurse practitioners, physicians assistants. Could you maybe tell us some of the other folks that might be options for people to turn to as far as getting dementia information or care?
I am so, so glad that question was asked, because I realized about 2 o'clock in the morning the other night that, oh my goodness, we left out a huge chunk. There is just a whole group of people who are going to be helping. There are all kinds of therapists. And by the way, these are listed in one of the care briefs that you'll get on your link. There's a whole care brief that's talking about the different kinds of therapists, like physical therapists, occupational therapists, just all kinds of people, speech therapists. Oh, that can be huge, 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 especially for those of you dealing with frontotemporal and Lewy body. That speech therapy issue can be enormous. The CNAs who may come into your home, if you are bringing in home caregivers, are just angels. And they are not skilled as highly as a doctor or a registered nurse, but oh my goodness, they are very skilled in how to manage things on a day-to-day basis. Massage therapist, oh, John had a massage therapist that he just glowed every time. Once he was bedridden, I would bring her into our home, and she made so much a difference for him in keeping him just relaxed, and just that touch therapy was so helpful. There's just, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to be leaving someone out. Oh, pets. Oh, for heaven's sakes.
Mhm.
Pets are huge helps for a lot of people. And so there's just all these kinds, there's just an army of people out there for caregivers, aging care managers. Oh my goodness, I didn't know such a person existed. They make such a difference. Groups like Dementia Alliance, where you can call and get people like Dee Dee on the phone who will talk to you. Oh my word. I mean, this is just priceless help. And so there are just all kinds of people like that in your community. And because we're boomers, I'm part of the boomer group. There's a big industry out there now. And so some of those helps are paid help and some of them are volunteer, but also just your neighbors, your friends, anybody you can bring into your team. And you educate those people as you go. And that's one of the things I think I'm talking about a little bit tomorrow. Does that answer the question that you meant to ask?
Exactly what we wanted to hear. Thank you so much. It always helps to know the other people that we can have in our corner on our care team. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. Pat, I know you are a very strong advocate, and you went through a long process of getting a proper diagnosis.
Yeah.
And you know, it's an incredible journey that you went through. Can you talk to us a little bit? And I know we could talk all day about it, but could you just touch on really being an advocate with your doctor if you don't necessarily agree with what you're telling you, or how to really, and you may be talking about this tomorrow, but how to really get the answers that you know you need?
We had, and for those of you who've read, for those of you who are new to the journey, I do encourage you to read my book, because I wrote the book I wanted that nobody had written. And as far as I know, there's not another book out there that's really plugged in to the issue of what do you do right after you get the diagnosis, because your world goes a little crazy. It just goes crazy. You lose your feet. And so it took us 12 doctors to find the right diagnosis and then the right treatment. Doctor number 11 gave a perfect diagnosis, but uh, did not know how to treat Lewy body dementia. He thought he did, but he didn't. And I had done some homework a little bit by that time, but also my gut told me, just trust your gut. My gut told me there's got to be more help than this. There's got to be some medication. And that moved me to doctor number 12. But yes, what happens is you are just in the room and you need to take some notes with you. You need to have someone in the room when you go, if you possibly can, to see physicians when you're trying to find the diagnosis, but also for sure after you get it, because those visits are very, very intense. They're things you know you want to discuss. So you need to write down what you want to say. What are the key questions? What do you want to ask about? Have a copy for you, a copy for the doctor, and a copy for the people you take with you. I know it's hard in the COVID situation, to deal with this, but this won't last forever. And so do that, and someone to take notes for you. It's very, very important. That's part of the advocacy and the team building, to get people to help you, because you're going to forget something they said. After every visit with Dr. Kaufer, I took my daughter and my son with me. My son took notes on his computer, and those notes let us know that all of us had forgotten something that Dr. Kaufer said that we needed to remember. So having a note taker is a big deal. Learning to ask good questions, and then learning, and I think a big part is learning to keep walking and keep seeking until you do find the right doctor, even if it means you got to get in the car and drive. Because here, caregivers, you don't go to the neurologist, the specialist, every week or every month. You go every 6 months. And so it's, if you've got to make the drive and you found a person who really knows how to treat it, be willing to do that, and develop a relationship with those care providers. That's very important. Figure out a way to connect with them as a human being, and choose people that you can do that with. If you have somebody, a doctor who's not a good listener, run from them. Don't stay there. If you have a doctor who puts you in at a 15-minute appointment and you wait in the office for an hour, and then you get in there for 15 minutes and he doesn't really listen to you, don't go back to that doctor. Hire that doctor. And that means don't come back. That's all it means. No stress. Just don't come back. And you can dig around and find people either online or in your community who can recommend a better doctor. And remember, your primary care physician can make referrals for you, can do all kinds of things for you. It's not just the specialist who has to be the one who helps you with this. Did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
You are such a good role model for people that want to advocate and aren't sure how to take that step away from their physician or someone who's not helping them. So we appreciate you talking about that. So important.
Let me say one more thing.
Please.
You do have to be strong, and you have to get over the white coat complex and the Dr. God complex, which some of them have. You have to get past that, but don't go in there with spit and vinegar. You've got to be nice, and you've got to be polite, and you've got to smile, even if you're going to fire them. Okay, so this is part of putting on the Meryl Streep thing, where you're going to do a little acting, and this is an important job, but you're there. You have a job when you're there, and it's to get the maximum amount of help that you can for your loved one and the best communication that you can. And so be sure that you're trying to keep that connection good, and try not to burn bridges by losing your temper and being the one they dread to see coming.
So important. So, Pat, today we were talking about awareness primarily, and tomorrow we're really going to focus on action. Can you give us a little brief summary of more of what to look forward to in your talk and Helen's talks tomorrow? Why should people stay tuned?
Oh my goodness, tomorrow's when the rubber meets the road. Yes, today we were giving you the background of what dementia is, because some people are at the place where they just got the diagnosis and they don't know. So this was awareness and attitude day, okay? So tomorrow is when I know for my talk, you're going to hear some repetition, but what you're going to see is that attitude start, okay, now it's moving down the road. And you're going to see how it plays out. And they're going to be examples of here's what you do, and here's how you do it. And here and Helen's is the same way. And so tomorrow is very definitely here is what you're going to actually do in certain situations. So we can't cover everything. The topic is way too big. But tomorrow is, yes, it's a big day. Don't just do today. And if you missed, and the people who missed today, that's okay, because we'll have a recording, right?
Right.
They can go back and get all this.
That's right, we will. So we had a lot of questions from a lot of people today on specific behaviors and how do we deal with this and how do we deal with that, and what about evening agitation or won't take medications. We're going to get into more of that tomorrow, right?
We will get into some of that, but here again, like I said, it's going to be hard to hit on everything because there's so much that can happen. What we're trying to do is get some themes and approaches going, and we also want to get people as much as we can plugged into resources. And personally, I want people to get in touch with me so I can plug them in. Those of you especially who are Lewy body dementia people, I want my email shared. I know it's going to blow up my email box. That's okay. You'll have to be patient, but I can plug you into some stuff that can really, really help you. And at Dementia Alliance, my goodness, they've been doing this for years. They can plug you into more resources that's much more specific and talk to you and give you people to talk to that's much more specific. So I also talk to people on the telephone. I love to talk to people on the telephone. So that kind of help also is available as long as people are patient and reasonable and realize that I'm also a mom and a grandmother.
And a dog mom.
Yes.
Okay, well, we're getting lots of favorable comments in saying thank you for the recordings. We want to remind everyone that the recordings will be available on YouTube, and they will get an email link with that information. So all they'll have to do is click on that to go there. Looks like we are ready for a full day tomorrow, Pat, and we're so excited. So I think you and I are going to maybe sign off here. Let Heather get on and let her tell us just a little bit about what's coming up tomorrow. And then we'll see everyone back at 11 tomorrow morning, 11 Eastern time tomorrow morning.